In this lesson, we're going to talk about congruent triangles. What we're going to talk about is how to identify congruent triangles and what makes triangles congruent. Okay, so the definition of any polygon that is congruent is that two polygons are congruent if and only if all of their corresponding parts are congruent. So for example, if we're talking about two triangles, it means that their corresponding angles are congruent. In other words, B is congruent to J because they have one congruency arc. A is congruent to H because they have two congruency arcs. And C is congruent to K because they have three congruency marks. Also, so those all three triangles are congruent. I mean, all three angles are congruent, but also all three sides, the corresponding sides are congruent. So AB is congruent to HJ because you have the one congruency dash here. Okay, and the two BC is congruent to AJ, and AC is congruent to KH or HK. So the congruency statement is that triangle ABC is congruent. This is the congruent symbol. It's an equal sign with a tilde up on top of it. Anyway, triangle ABC is congruent to HJK. And the reason for that is that A goes to H, B goes to J, and C goes to K. All right? Or and because we said A, B, C, so A goes to H, B goes to J, and C goes to K. All right, so pause the video and copy this definition down. Okay, the third angles theorem says that if two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of a second triangle, then the third angle of the triangles are congruent as well. Okay, so if we know that two triangles or two angles are congruent, then we know that the third one is going to be congruent as well. Okay, so that would be three arcs there. All right, the different properties of triangular congruence. The reflexive property of triangular congruence just says that a triangle is congruent to itself. So ABC is congruent to ABC. The symmetric property of triangle congruence says that if triangle ABC is congruent to EFG, then EFG is also congruent to ABC. So if this is congruent to that, then that means that is congruent to this. And the transitive property of triangle congruence says if triangle ABC is congruent to EFG and EFG is congruent to JKL, then ABC is congruent to JKL. Okay? So pause the video and copy this theorem and these properties down into your notes. All right. So it asks us to identify all the congruent sides and angles, then write a congruency statement for the triangle. So very easily, A is congruent to J because A is congruent to J. All right, because they have one congruency symbol. All right, B is congruent to, so this has the two of them. There's the two arcs. So B is congruent to K, and C is congruent to L. All right, because you have 3 and 3. Okay, so these are the angles. Okay, these are the angles that are congruent. Okay, and then if you're talking about the sides, AB is congruent to, that has the one congruency arc, so that would be JK. All right. 2. So BC is congruent to KL. And AC has a 3. So JL has 3. So AC is congruent to JL. Okay, so that's the congruent sides and the congruent angles. Okay, so the congruency statement then would be triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, and you go the same thing. A goes with J, B goes with K, and C goes with L. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle, this is a triangle JKL. And this is what we're talking about when we say the congruency statement. Find the values of x and y when triangle ABC is congruent to triangle FDE. Okay, so here the important part is you have A, B, C is congruent to F, D, E. I always like to write them on top of each other. That way I know that A goes with F, okay? A goes with F. B goes with D, okay? So these two go together. And C goes with E, all right? So when we're talking about finding the values of x and y, well, F goes with A, okay? And Y goes with or the D goes with B. So that would be the Y goes with 48 because they're congruent. Okay, so D is equal to 48, or Y equals 48 degrees. Okay, so Y is 48 degrees. So if we know that F and A are congruent, so that means that we know that this over here is also 2x minus y, and we just found out that y is 48, so this would be 2x minus 48 is the measure of this angle, okay? We also have found out that from the last lesson that all three angles add up to 180 degrees. So we have 2x minus 48 plus 108 plus 48 is equal to 180. Okay, so when we do this, negative 48 plus 48, all right, so cancels out. We're left with 2x plus 108 equals 180 minus 108. Okay, 108's cancel out on the left-hand side. 2x is equal to 72 divided by 2. So x is equal to 36. So now we know that y is equal to 48 and x is equal to 36. All right. And so just to double check, if we plug it in, 2 times 36 minus 48, that would be 72 minus 48. Okay, get the calculator out. 72 minus 48 is equal to 24. Okay, so measure is equal to the measure of angle A. So when we add them all together, 24 plus 48 plus 108 is equal to 180 degrees, which is what we were expecting to find. Okay, so that is how we use the different properties and the different congruency statements and stuff to figure out our angles and the values of the variables that are sometimes used to um, identify the measure of the angles. Okay, so if you have any questions, make sure you ask, and we'll talk to y'all later.